Okay, simmer down. Simmer down. Chaviva, why are you sitting on your desk? Come closer then if you can't see. There's a seat right here. Right next to the rabbi. Right there. You're too far back. Okay, ladies, we have a lot to do today. Please open your books. We're on page 57. Let's go. We got tons to do. Wow. A test will be returned at the end of the class. Very impressed. I am a master teacher. It's the only thing. What else could it be? What are you laughing at? What are you laughing at? That was good midterms. Good midterms. Good midterms. We're going to go, and I'm going to stop class early. We're going to go through at the end of class. I'll be happy to do that. Okay, we're on our third class in the world of bishul cooking. Okay, we did the doraisas. Now we're going to do the various restrictions of bishul, the gezerot that the rabbis added. These were fences that were added by the rabbis to assist us, to help us in the fear that maybe since cooking and preparing food is such a major part of Shabbat, as it should be, the concern was that maybe people would start to play with the flame, do various things, and that would not have been good. Okay? So let's list them off. Actually, let's go one by one. Let's go slowly, and we're going to figure it out. We'll do it together. On a Torah level, you are permitted to take any type of food, and put it onto the fire on Erev Shabbat. Directly take a pot full of food and put it onto the fire before Shabbat, on Erev Shabbat. Not a problem. Not a problem. The rabbis were like, people are so conscientious when they put foods onto a fire, we're worried. We're concerned. What's the concern? They're going to come and start to play with the fire, start to move the food around, be maher habishol, move the food around. They're going to play with the knobs. Or in the old days, they'll stoke the coals that are under the food, which obviously is a malacha daraisa. So the rabbi said, we're going to have to make various conditions over here when it comes to the food. So on a Torah level, not a problem. What we're going to discuss today are rabbinic restrictions which have been fully accepted by the Jewish people. Maybe at some points various differences of opinions, but everything we're going to discuss today are accepted rabbinic opinions when it comes to dealing with food on Shabbat. The first is called Shehiya. Shehiya. Shehiya literally means as it is. As the rabbis were nervous that what you're going to do is take the food, put it onto a naked flame, and start to play around with it. So they said, well, listen, okay, what we need you to do is to at least have the food a third or more cooked. This is a leniency. And this is the leniency of, who's 33%? Rashi, that's right. So he said at least a third cooked. Why is that going to help? Because if the food is at least a third cooked, then there's less chance you're so concerned about it, because the cook has already begun, you've already stirred it around, and you leave it to cook. So the rabbis were less concerned when it came to this particular restriction. So they said at least a third cooked. We'll see one leniency that says totally raw right before Shabbat, but that's a real leniency only in emergency situations, because if something is totally raw, then you have to leave it to cook for a while before it starts to cook, so you're less concerned. But that is a leniency which is only real shat at the chak at a time that's under extreme pressure. Otherwise, you've got to make sure your food is at least a third cook. Now, this is actually part of a machloket between Hananya and the Rabbanan. And this is a big dispute when it comes to Hilchos Shabbos that's worked through and discussed and argued over right through to the Rishonim. When we study this, it just goes on and on and on. Basically, Hananya says that machal ben drusai is enough as Shabbat comes in. The food at least is a third cooked, at least according to Rashi. Okay, if you want to be strict upon yourself, it's a half cooked. The Rabbanan said it's got to be fully cooked. Right? Don't take any chances. As Shabbat enters, make sure the food is fully cooked. Okay, remember, how do we define whether something is third cooked? We said if it takes 3 hours to cook, 1 hour that it's been in a cooking situation is sufficient. This machal goes on and on. Eventually, actually, paskin, I believe in most cases, like Hanania, that we rely and we say no problem. A third cooked, so it doesn't have to be completely cooked, but at least the third cooked as Shabbat comes in. Okay, that's number one. Number two. The rabbis added something else, and it goes like this. The world of Shehiya. Ovens in the old days were pretty much holes that were either put into the ground or that were built above the ground, and they looked, excuse my terrible drawing, but I failed art. They were pretty much like this. Outdoor burners, yeah, that had a couple of holes in the top that you put the pots in. And these holes, okay, can't imagine, went down, now seeing inside, right? Like that. And at the bottom they had, here was the fire, right? Well, the fire was inside, and there were coals here as well. So this was the heat. This is the heat over here. This is fire and coals, right? Whatever they were using to warm it up. And these are the pots, right? These are the pots. It's called a kira. A kira is an oven. The kira is these old-fashioned ovens that were basically set in, and the heat would be coming here and would heat it up. Okay? And there usually was like a door on the side where you could go and you would stoke the coals. Right? You'd put like something inside and you'd, you know what I'm saying? And keep it going. Because fires don't just stay like they do today. You've got to push, like that. Okay? Okay. The rabbi said, listen, we wanted to have hot food on Shabbat. We spoke about that last class. Right? Mitzvah Oneg Shabbos, hot food, there's a way to do it. As long as this is cooked before Shabbos, if it's the third cook, you can have the hot food on Shabbos. However, they're like, listen, if we just let you leave things as they usually are during the week, what are we concerned about? What's the possibility over here? You're going to forget it's Shabbos, food is food, and you're going to start stoking the coals. So you have to do a couple of things, and this is the olden days. Okay? And the first one was called grufa. And the second one was called ketuma. What is grufa or ketuma? Or grifa and ketima? What were these two things?
What's the definition of Shehiya?
Shehiya, this is a kira. Kira is an oven. It's old-fashioned ovens.
But like you said Shehiya and I don't understand.
So now, so we did one thing already. Now we're gonna add this part as well. This is the second part to it.
So Kira is part of Shehiya?
Kira is just an oven. An oven. Anything when you're involved in Bishul, you're in the world of Kira. So we've gone out and we're going to apply this idea to Shehiya and Chazara as well, as we're going to see in a second. Okay? So we're in the world of Shehiya still for now, and we've said, you know what? So Shehiya has to be at least third cooked. As well as that, there's another challenge we have when it comes to ovens. So they said, listen, if we just leave the coals as they are burning away, we're going to have a problem because people are going to start. So what you're going to have to do is you have to be Megarif. You have to push the coals to the side. Push the coals to the side. And that's what they used to do. Erev Shabbat, they would push the coals, right? Or remove them totally, right? And the heat would remain, but you would, because there was like this is an enclosed setting, or just push them like that. They said, but that's not enough. Because there could be some coals over there. Okay? So as well as that, you need to ketuma, which used to take ashes or a certain, or sand, I guess, or something else which looked different from the coals, and they would just basically spritz it over the fire, over the coals. Okay? So the coals were pretty hot still, but they had this thing that was spread over it, like a white sand or an ash or something like that. What did that do? That became a heker. It became a recognized thing. It was recognizable. A sign. You'd recognize it was a sign, a similar heker, it was noticeable. It was noticeable when that happened. Okay? A reminder. A reminder is really what it is, right? Recognize and it would be remind you. Remind you what? That it's Shabbos. You would see it. The gerufa would lessen the heat a little bit. It would lessen the heat. Right? You don't have full heat. Right? When there's less heat, when it's on a low flame, you're less concerned and less worried to go and start messing around with the fire. So that would lessen the heat. And this, the ketuma, would just be a visible sign that it was Shabbat. So that's what the rabbis made as part of the Erev Shabbat preparations of your oven. Nowadays, unless you're making barbecue, right, we don't do this nowadays. These are not our ovens. What is the modern 2016/17 equivalent of this? Blech. Blech. The plata is a sheet of metal that you put over the fire and, according to many, over the knobs as well. What is that going to do? It's going to do two things. Number one, it lessens the heat a little bit. A little bit. Okay? Because you now got something interfering. It's still hot. That's okay. It can be hot. That's not a problem. But it's lessened it a little bit. And number two, and just as important, is it reminds you it's Shabbos. That's what a blech does. When you have a blech, when you have a sheet of metal, a blech, over the fire and over the knobs, it reminds you that it is Shabbat. So when you see it, you're going to be like, oh, something's burning it. You're not going to touch it. You're going to withdraw your hand. Shabbos. Yeah? So that's going to be good enough. Chaviva.
What about the warming drawers that they have in an oven?
We're going to come to warming drawers a little bit later. An interesting question, because do they cook? Do they not cook? We're going to come to that. So that's going to be more of a Chazara question. So we're going to get there. Now we're in the world of Shehiya. So we've taken this idea. Now, Shani, you with me, darling? We've taken Shehiya. We've said, okay, first of all, at least the third cooked. Because at least the third cooked, you're not so worried. That's not. But number two, you want to make sure there's a blech on. You want to make sure there's a blech on it as well. I.e., it's gone through grufa ketuma. Okay, you need to have that as well. All right? That's going to help when it comes to Shia. So before Shabbat comes in, make sure the blech is on. You could theoretically, you could have food that is on the fire on Shabbat that is totally cooked. You could have that. Let's say Shabbat comes in and you forgot to put the blech on. If the food is at least a third cooked, you can remove it. I'll tell you how to do it. Put the blech on Shabbat, and then return the pot. You can do that. If the food is raw, or from 0 to a third, you cannot do that. You cannot do that. It's got to stay, and it can be removed, and whatever it is, it is. It is non-removable. It is non-removable.
That it has fire underneath? Or like
Yes, I'm talking fire underneath.
Oh, it's not?
Electric we're going to come to.
Could you
Electric
heat it?
we're going to come to. I want to discuss electric later. That's a modern thing, so I want to save that to the end of this discussion. That is going to be less of a problem because there are no dials or controls or naked flame. That is there.
Yeah, but you
So
can
using
plug it.
electric, nachon, but you're not, if there are dials, that it could become, some don't have dials. If there are dials, many people, like on a crock pot, right? We have a platter that has no dial. Actually, my wife uses the metal now, but it has no dials. If it has dials, slow down. She's talking about electric plug-in platter. Have an Eretz Yisrael. Okay, talking about electric platter thing. That object is, I mean, Sephardim are very lenient with that. Okay, you may never need a blech. That could be like, we anyway cover the aluminum foil, but truth be told, you may not even need a blech on that.
Blech, you didn't say blech with plata?
Blech we're defining as a cover over a flame. That's what the blech is. right? It comes for this, to lessen the heat and act as a heker. And it's nikah, right? Sheyesh esh. That's what it's going to do for us. So it's a metal sheet over the fire. That's what a blech is. That's what we're talking about. There is also electric versions nowadays, which are less of a problem. We're going to discuss them later on. They are less of a problem than this because there's no naked flame. If there are knobs, if there's a knob in the crock pot, knob in the oven, Moshe Feinstein, others say, take some aluminum and put it, you'll see, have you seen people with a crock pot with a little bit of aluminum on the knob? That's what they're doing. That's not going to help with the grufa, because just having the knob there doesn't reduce the heat. But it's going to remind you it's Shabbos. That's what it's doing over there. I see the aluminum, which isn't usually there. It's Shabbat. That's what it's doing. It's just a sign, a reminder.
But isn't he having the plaza in the first place already reminding me to never use it during the week and it's there on Shabbat?
That's good, but over the knobs we're saying.
So it's not enough.
Over the knobs. Some are leading with this, and some are not.
What's he calling?
Recognize, it's a reminder. A heker, lakir. Okay? It's a reminder that it's Shabbos. Grufa is, you've removed the coals. Remove the coals. Write this down, you're going to need it. Remove the coals or push it to the side. Ketuma is a cover. Cover it up. And in the old days, they didn't use metal, they just covered it with ashes, but that had the same effect, right, to remind you that it was Shabbat. Yes, Miss Wolfson.
So if it's 0 to a third cooked, you can't put it on the flame?
No.
And if you do, then you can't.
If you cannot write, it's a problem.
So
it's
like
a problem.
Just leave it there all Shabbos?
Can you eat from it? Once it's cooked.
If a pot of raw food, or food less than a third cooked, was left cooking on the range without a blech, the food may not be used that Shabbos.
Can you take
Unless it is totally raw. Totally raw is okay. But from 0.1 up to a third, whatever it's going to be.
Totally raw though?
Okay, so fine. So if it's totally raw, there is a leniency that they have, but it can only be used in emergency situations. You should not rely on it every Shabbos. If you come home, if you got to do it, or something happened, emergency, you can put totally raw food. But if it's a little bit cooked, up to a third, then it's a problem. It's a problem. That's the machlok Hanani Rabbanan. Hanani is more lenient, and he says it has to be a third. Yeah. Ketuma is covering the coals, yeah. So if they're removed, that's not a problem, right? But if it was still there, moved to the side, they would cover it over as well to remind them, yeah.
But then is ketuma more of a fikar or?
Ketuma is a form. It's a heker.
Oh, heck.
It's a heker. Ketuma is a heker. Just you see it, you see the stuff there, and it's right. Gerufa reduces the heat a little bit, so you're not so it's like hot heat. Cooking your food is going to burn it, right? It's going to get dried out, and ketuma is just covering it up. Oh, you're clear on those two expressions: gerufa, ketuma, heker, kira.
Wait, so grufa and ketuma are both hekers?
Ketuma is really a heker, right? Gerufa probably was a little bit as well, but it wasn't enough. So ketuma was the real heker. This was for just to take down the heat a little bit.
And for ketuma, you said to cover it with ashes. Cover what with ashes?
The coals. You used to have coals underneath, and they would cover the coal. They would have hot coals, you know.
Yeah.
So they would take the ashes, they would just put it on top. It would retain the heat. Usually the fire extinguisher. You put coals, the fire extinguishers. Let's say like a white hot coal on a barbecue or something. So they would just cover it with ashes so you can see it. That's what it did. Yeah? Good? Okay, let's go slowly. So if it was at least third cooked, you've got to put the blech on. You can take it off, and you can put the blech on. I'll show you how to do that a little bit later. But that's gonna do it. Okay? When a blech is properly placed on a range, it is technically permissible to leave even raw food cooking on it. Therefore, the food was not yet cooked when it's made to put the cholent up right before Shabbos. It's a leniency. Do not rely upon it. Okay. So how about an oven? How about an oven? You want to leave your food in an oven, today's ovens I'm talking about, from Erev Shabbat. Are you allowed to do that, is the question.
Isn't it opening the door change the heat?
So we'll come to that right now. So you're allowed to leave food in the oven, okay? But it should be fully cooked. Okay, some are strict and they say, well, it's the same thing, but ideally it should be fully cooked if you leave it beforehand.
Is a third considered fully cooked or not?
It's a leniency. You should try to make sure it is fully cooked. I'll tell you why. Because an oven is considered to be like a naked flame. That's what we're saying. An oven we consider to be like a naked flame. So some people have an insert. If you have an insert, which I've never seen it. I mean, when I was a kid, I used to see some like rabbis doing it, but they would have like an insert. That was like a blech. That was like a blech. So they say you should have it at least fully cooked. Okay, as Shabbat comes in. Okay, and I'm going to come to warming drawers a little bit later. Warming drawers are not this question. People don't leave. People. Oh, wait a second. I'll take that back. People do leave food in warming drawers from before Shabbos, or they put stuff in there to warm up.
What's warming?
Warming drawer at the bottom of a lot of ovens nowadays, they have a drawer that you open up. It doesn't get hot. It just gets warm enough, and it keeps the food warm.
It gets hot.
You don't
It was
cook. You don't cook in a warming drawer, though,
I
right?
mean, it goes to like 200 degrees.
That's pretty hot. But it's like you don't cook in it.
No, you don't cook it.
You don't cook in it.
So what's the question?
Can you? Is that different to an oven anyway?
But if it's turned off, you can use the oven.
We're talking about if the yeah, but it's on. Talking about an oven that's on. If it's off, then it's just a closet. It's not. Yeah.
What about like if you put a baking sheet on the top?
No, it's got to be completely concealed because the heat comes from all the sides. Yeah.
Well, basically, like what she said, like what if you turn off the oven right before Shabbat? It's still
Not a problem.
outside? It's
Not a problem.
off?
If the oven's off, it's not a problem at all.
So you
We're talking about when the oven is on, and you leave the food inside, and then before you open the door, it's gonna turn off.
What about Shabbat mode?
Shabbat mode is not Shabbat mode. I told you. Shabbat mode is Chagim mode, and even that's questionable. My wife doesn't rely upon it anymore. Of changing it, it keeps it steady temperature and allows you to change it with a certain random change. It's not for now. Shabbat
yeah,
mode
but what
for
if you
Shabbat.
don't
We're talking about it turns off. 1 second. It turns off by itself on Shabbat. That's good. That's the perfect scenario where the oven turns off by itself an hour. You program it to turn off an hour after Shabbat begins, or an hour and a half. That's totally okay.
I don't understand how a Kira is like an oven nowadays. Like we don't have, like you don't see the coals.
You are right. You're right. You're right. You're right. Right. What? So the only comparison is like this: modern ovens don't have coals, but they have a raw flame. Think of a Kira as a raw flame. That's the way to think about it. So there was a raw fire.
Okay, so let's say that was it. Then we could say that it's like a tuma because it's covered.
No, when you put the food inside, it's
Wait.
to some degree you're saying you can't see the flame anymore in the
Yeah.
modern ovens. There are those that say that. That is true. There are say that nowadays it's not so recognizable. You can't see it, but people are usually strict. That is true. But there's another problem. That's putting stuff into the oven on Shabbos. It looks like you're cooking. That still stands because people still cook in ovens. Yeah.
When does Erev Shabbos like officially begin?
When before Shehiya.
Okay.
Before Shehiya. That's once Shehiya comes in. As far as we're concerned, it is Shabbos.
Even if you don't like the candle?
Even if you don't like the candles, it is Shabbos. You don't like. Once Shehiya comes, you're done.
So your oven should be off before Shehiya.
Or you can have it on still. We said you can leave your oven on. Just get put the food inside
Okay.
beforehand. That's fine to have it on, even after it comes in, as long as it turns off. Be 1 second. The problem with opening oven doors is you open the door with a naked flame that's visible, air goes in, open, close, it may go from the air going in. Remember like we said about the fridge? Fridge goes in, a fridge door opens, air goes in, clicks in the thermostat. By fridge it's okay. By fridge it's okay. We spoke about that already. There's a grandma we said, and it's not right. Well, not only that, well, the actual thing itself is, but with the naked flame we're more careful. Some people are strict. There are people who are lenient to take stuff out. Putting stuff into an oven on Shabbat is forbidden unless you have an insert. You cannot put food to warm up in your oven. Warming drawers, there are those that are lenient because you don't cook in it. It's there as a warming drawer. There are those who are lenient, there are those who are not lenient. By buying an oven, you cannot put food into your oven, fully cooked food I'm talking, on Shabbat to warm up. It's mechse k'mavashel. Since I mentioned, I must write down the reason. Mechse k'mavashel. You got all the stuff down, ladies? Okay. Mechse k'mavashel, which is a rabbinic restriction. It's the same thing. I looked at this recently. You said Sephardim, you said?
No, I said why are the Sephardim are like more lenient than the Ashkenaz?
In some cases they are, in some cases they're not. Actually, I'll show you by Hatmana, the Sephardim are more strict.
Because you say usually.
Sometimes, no, usually happens. Mechse k'mavashel. Are you Sephardi?
I'm half.
Which half? Your father or mother? Your father? Yeah, one of us, baby. Nice try with that half business. Right, Mechse k'mavashel. Mechse k'mavashel, it looks like this is a rabbinic description, also known as, how's this known elsewhere in Judaism? This is a term just for Shabbos, I think. Marit ayin. Maris ayin, you heard it before? Right, Maris ayin is it looks like you're doing a prohibition. Okay, it looks like you're doing something that is forbidden. Okay, it is forbidden to cook food on Shabbos. By putting food into your oven on Shabbos, it looks like you're cooking. It's called the Shabbos version of Maris ayin in the world of Bishul is called Mechse. It looks like you're cooking. This is a rabbinic restriction, of course.
Such a frustrating.
It's not so frustrating when you know how to get out of it. Okay, when you prepare things beforehand, it works out. So you cannot put it inside the oven. Warming drawers, again, speak to your LOR.
But that's why you can't put it into the oven.
That is why you cannot cook it completely, because remember, it's completely cooked. It's completely cooked. Why can you what? So you can put it onto a blech. You can warm it up on something that's on the blech. That's okay. Into an oven, unless you have an insert, then you can, because an oven is a naked flame. Just like you cannot put a food onto a naked flame on Shabbat, because it looks like you're cooking. You cannot put something in an oven on Shabbat either.
What is this insert?
We're going to get to it. Just like a metal cube is like that. It's like a blech for inside the oven. No, that's the natural oven itself. No, it would have to be an extra thing over there. I don't see it nowadays, but people don't need them because we have blechs. Okay, 1 second. Now, when it comes to crock pots and hot plates is the electric chashmal, right? There, you are more lenient, especially if there's no knobs, because you can't play around with it. You can't play around with it. It doesn't technically require a blech. Sephardim are, in this case, more lenient. So leaving food cooking on a single temperature crock pot is not considered Shehiya. It's not Shehiya, right? There's no naked flame, because if Shehiya is naked flame, right? Or a fire you can play with, or coals, or some original, or an oven, right? Something you can turn and mix and cook and move. But here you can't. So since that's the situation, you can leave food on electric hot plate or crock pot of this kind, with no temperature control, before Shabbos, right? Even without aluminum if it's plugged in. Okay, so talking about a crock pot's electric.
And you can take it on and on.
Ah, now that's where it gets tricky. If you want to return the item to the heating situation, what's called Chazara, Lachzor, that is its own set of halachot. Okay?
What was the question?
By the way, it has to be completely cooked before Shabbos, obviously, or at least a third cooked.
Completely, or-
Yeah, or at least a third cooked. Oh no, if it's without aluminum foil, you should still make sure it's completely cooked. You can take aluminum foil, put it over the plata chashmal, right? And that's a blech on top of it. And then you can leave it even a third cook you can rely upon. But usually people don't cook on these things. They're just for warming up.
No,
Having
but-
said that, that's okay.
Would the pan be considered as the aluminum?
What?
Like the pan that the food's in, with heating it up, is that considered like having tinfoil on it?
Are you asking me if you can put a food onto a pot that's on something, does that act as a blech? Is that you're asking me?
No, she's saying the food's in the pot.
Okay, so no, the pot itself is not. The pot itself is not a blech.
Like the separation.
No. If you put something on top of the pot or on top of the pan,
Then
that's the separation. We're going to get to that. That's going to come in handy. That's called a hefsek kaderu. We're going to come to that in a second. Okay. Okay, one second. Give me a second. Okay, fine. Okay, we did Shehiya. We did Kira, Grufa, and Ketuma. Electric. Okay, hot water only spoke about it already. Okay, if there's no temperature controlled, it's called Grufa, right? Ideally, though, you should make sure the water has boiled before Shabbos. Okay, some say that's a stringency. At least a third, though, would be important. But ideally, try to make sure your urn is at least a third cooked before Shabbos. Ideally, completely boiled. And the concern is that when Shabbos comes in, you may take some of the water out, right? And then, since it's not completely boiled, the rest of the water in the urn gets cooked faster. Memaher bishul, you are speeding up the process. Okay, that's Shehiya. Are we good on Shehiya? Shehiya is basically fire preparation of the oven from before Shabbos. Okay? So in an ideal world, what you want to make sure is that the food is totally cooked, the flame is covered with a blech, and the food is on the flame before Shabbos. That's the ideal situation. If the food is at least third cooked, and you forgot the blech, pick up the food, stick the blech on. If it's not, you cannot take that food off the fire. Okay? All right, there is a leniency which you should not rely upon unless you have to, which is a totally raw food right before Shabbos comes in, because then the rabbis won't so worried you're going to start to play with the fire or the pot. Try your utmost not to rely upon that. Putting food on a naked flame or into an oven is mechsek mavashal. Next. This area of halacha is much stricter, and it's called chazara. Chazara, from the lashon lachzor, to return. This is the second rabbinic restriction. Chazara, or chazara as they call it in the Ashkenazi world. Chazara is, now it's Shabbos. Shehiya is getting into Shabbos. Chazara is on Shabbos. Now on Shabbos, if you have food that is on a heating situation or is in the fridge or somewhere else, and you want to return it to the situation of heat, you want to warm it up. Basically, you want to warm up food. Okay? Warming up food on Shabbos. Or chazar, which means returning a food to a cooking situation. So what's the halachas over here? How does this work? So the rabbis were more nervous about this because it ain't before Shabbos, it's on Shabbos. So they added a bunch of restrictions to this. They added a bunch of restrictions, okay? Because they were nervous about this mechsek and mavashal, because now you're taking food and putting on the fire on Shabbos. So mechsek and mavashal really kicks in on Shabbos itself. You with me? It makes sense, right? Because it's now Shabbos, and I want to warm up my food on a fire. And the rabbis were like, whoa, so we're going to add a lot more over here. So we're going to look at two scenarios where this happens, okay? 1 and 2. One is the food was on the fire. The food is on the fire. 2 is the food was not on the fire. In both situations, the food must be fully cooked. In order to do chazara, the food must be fully cooked. Obviously, because if it ain't fully cooked, you put something on the fire, right? It's a third cooked or a half cooked, then we've got problems over here, right? Because you're moving it around, putting it back on. So if you want to deal with this, food must be fully cooked. Nachon, makes sense, right? So remember, Chazara is going to be much more strict than Shehiya. Okay. You got this down? Okay. So the food is on the fire, food is on the fire. Let's go with scenario number 1. So now it's Shabbos, and you are a good Jewish girl. You made sure the cholent is on, but you have Jewish sons or Jewish male guests, and they want cholent Friday night. And you're like, but I got to feed Abba on Shabbos. And they're like, I don't care. Give me meat. So now we're going to do. So now you've got to. So are you allowed? So now here we are. Here's my this scenario. Here's my oven. Here's my fire. Fire. Can't you see my fire? There is my blech on top. Okay. You're going to need a blech for this, as we'll see in a second. And the pot's on top. So what do you want to do? You want to serve cholent from the pot into a bowl. Okay. So number 1, it's got to be fully cooked. Okay. 2, can you serve food from the fire itself? No. What's that called? What was that called? Had a special term for it? Megis. Megis, right? We're nervous, right? Also, mechsek mavashal, actually. If you start things, you have to take it off the fire. You got to take it off the fire, and you got to remove it from the fire. Okay? So you can take it off. That's not a problem. Taking it off, not a problem at all. Taking stuff away from the fire, no problem. The problem's going to come after they've eaten half the cholent and left no meat for Abba for the next day. The situation now is, hey, I want to get the cholent back on the fire. So here the rabbis were like, now we're going to get very strict with you because you're returning into the situation. So here are the various restrictions that need to happen in order for you to do that. List this down. Number 1, Mvoshal kol tzorko. It's got to be totally cooked. 100%. Okay? If you're moving pots around, when it comes off, it's got to be totally cooked. That's number 1. Okay?
If it's on the fire, right?
We're talking about food, that's the scenario. The food was on the fire. In order to take it off, we don't care. But to put it back on the fire, because you want to have it for Shabbat day, and this is Friday night, or Shabbat morning, and for Shabbat later on, it's got to be totally cooked. You cannot return a food to the fire, which they go, oh, Erev Shabbat was so lenient, a third was enough, a half was good, that's Erev Shabbos. Now we're on Shabbos, no such leniency. Right? We're going to the world of Rabbanan, totally cooked. We don't mess with that. So it's got to be totally cooked. Number 2, you must have the intent to return it. Right? You must have the kavanah, intention to return. That means when it comes off, you must have the da'ato, the das, lahachzir. You must have the intention to be machzirit. So in your mind, you don't have to say it, in your mind you're like, I'm taking it off, it's going back on. If in doubt, have that in mind. Yeah.
So if you're taking food off for the night, you're going to have an intention, you're going to put it back on in the morning?
No.
Doesn't count?
No. Because to do that, you'd have to do condition number 3, which is impossible to do it that way. Let me show you how. Condition number 3 is you've got to keep one of your hands on the pot the entire time. Okay, which is referred to as Oda biyado. It's got to remain in your hand. Now, some people are very strict about this. Some people take this literally and they don't put it down. They don't put it down. They hold it, or they put it in a situation that if the hand were to be let go, it would fall on the floor. So they'll put it on the edge of the table, or the edge of a chair, or someone else will spoon it out for them. They will literally hold it and keep their hand on it. Some say you don't need to do that. Some say it's okay to put it down, but you gotta keep your hand on it the entire time. You let go, it don't go back. It don't go back. Some people literally, you see some people, I remember, I've seen in people's houses for Shabbos, they literally have on the edge of the table, they'll spoon it from the edge of the table. Now this is only if you want to return it. If you don't want to return it, stick it on the table and let go. We're only talking about Chazara, return it to the situation.
Does it have to be your hand, or can you like pass it around the table?
Your hands.
Okay.
I believe it's got to be your hands.
Wait, so if you like take it out and you're keeping your hand on it, but someone else puts their hand on it, is that?
Your hand, the person who's taking it off has to keep their hand on it the entire time. One second. Let's say, okay, one second. Let's say it gets too heavy for you, want to change it.
Or you just want to pour your own bowls.
And
so
someone
you
else,
want to
okay,
switch.
fine. Someone else can hold it for you. That's an interesting question. You're saying now someone else, because it gets heavy for you or something. Listen, you can put it down at the table. Just gotta keep your hand on it. That's the halach. I'm just saying some people will, the halach is you can put it down on the table, just keep your hand on it. Okay, it's gotta remain in the hand. Okay? Number 4, you need ketuma. What's ketuma? What?
A visible sign.
Yeah, which is the blech. You must have a blech on the fire. You must have a blech on the fire in order to return it. You cannot return it without a blech on the fire. Okay, this is 4 necessary parts to return it. So once again, let's go through this slowly. You have a pot of food on the fire. You want to take it off, you want to return it. Can you return that food to the fire? And the answer is yes, you can. But since we're putting stuff on a fire, we're nervous. And the rabbis were very concerned. So they said you can do it, but these conditions must exist. Number 1, when it comes off the fire, it must be fully cooked. Number 2, when you take it off the fire, you must have the kavanah, the dat or lachzir to return it. Number 3, oda biyado must remain in your hand, or at least be held with your hand when it's down. My wife will take it off, the chulin pot's off. There's a little handle, she'll hold onto it, she'll split it off, and then she'll put it back on again. Okay. Number 4, ketuma, you must have a blech. You can definitely not return a food to a naked flame on Shabbat.
Is there such a thing as starting being more lenient with reheating liquid on Shabbat?
So, a reheating liquid. Well, hold on. When we get to liquid, hold on to that. There are those that say, everyone says you can't cook liquid on Shabbat.
Right.
No one says you could put soup onto. Oh, but this works with soup as well. You realize that? Yeah. This is all food. You have a cooked soup, totally cooked. Take it off, put it back on again. Not a problem. This is solid and liquid. Same rules apply. If you want to return the soup for Shabbat day, that's okay. Chullah, whatever it is. Let's say, give me 1 second, my darling. 1 second. Let me just finish off because my ADD kicks in and then we're all over the place and I have no Ritalin on me. Let's say that. I already forgot. See what happens? Chullah pot. Thank God. Crock pot. Now you get a crock pot. So I want to do with a crock pot. What do I do now? Electric crock pot. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. Right? You got to have it. How about this? How about ketuma? Fine, I'll make sure it's fully cooked. I intend to return it. I'm going to keep it in my hand when it comes out. Take the crock pot, the bowl comes out of the crock pot. Nachon? How about this? How about ketuma?
It's not visible.
So what people do is they take aluminum, and this is what you should do as a habit in case this happens, and they line underneath the pot that goes inside the crock, whatever it's called, right? Whatever the casing is, and they'll line it with aluminum and have it stick out over the side. That's your blech. You've seen that before?
My friend did it.
Your friend did that?
We were in Shabbat. I went to Shabbat for the upstate, and she did it.
She did that?
I thought it just so the thing would not like get
Dirty. Now it's this. She may not even realize why she's done it. She's actually made a blech for the crock pot. And that way you can return to the crock pot, right?
Does that
Makes
mandatory?
sense. No, but if you want to return food to it, it is.
But I have a question. If you're not going to be taking out that pot from the crock pot, like
You can't serve from a crock pot.
you can't. So
You cannot serve from a crock pot. You've got to take it off. Uh-huh.
So then,
Yeah.
What if you just have food on a blech, not on a stove or anything? It's just on a blech and you take it off. Do you still need this force?
These are all the, yeah. This is exactly how to do it.
It's already on a blech.
We're talking about Erev Shabbos, got on the blech, and you want to take it off and put it back on, you need to have these four. Also, it doesn't have to be hot when you put it back on. It doesn't have to remain hot, but it's got to be at least warm. At least warm. If it's not, it's now stone cold, which means for a cholent you stood a long time holding it, but some other object you had on that's now cold, not even just warm, a little bit warm, is good enough. It's got to remain warm. Right, it's got to remain warm. Just at least warm, which in most cases it is. But let's say it's cold, or you got food inside your fridge. Now remember, the food has to be dry, right? Or at least a minimal sauce on it, right? Minimum sauce on it. So just to answer your question, there are Sfari folks who are more lenient and say that if it's got quite an accumulation of rotev, soup no, clear liquid no. But something like a choresh, something which has got like soupy, a chonachadon, or choresh karafs. My mouth is watering. It's worth marrying a Persian just to get these foods going for yourself, trust me. Right, one of these foods, there are people lenient with it. Ashkenazim are usually more strict with this, and that's why the children's on the pot Erev Shabbat. Okay? Better to put it onto electric platter. Better to put it onto electric platter than onto an actual flame, as a side point. And maybe we'll do that. Electric platters, according to Rav Avodah Yosef, electric platters are much less problematic when it comes to all these halachot, because there's no naked flame over there. That's the reason why.
But what if it's already married in Ashkenaz?
Yeah, that's...
Then that
She
sucks.
becomes 30.
If
No,
it-
she, a
no,
Sephardi
no.
girl.
Oh,
Then it sucks.
yeah, then.
Not good. Not good. Rahman Aslan. It's good, it's good. It helps the gene pool, trust me. I'm married an Ashkenazi. My kids are Ashkefardi. I'm better looking than me, thank God. I'm going to mix it up. There's generations of marrying the community that creates this, my friends. You've been warned. I'm just saying, mix it up a little bit. My wife has a thing. I mentioned a chuppah once. I pulled a chuppah, my wife, and it was Ashkenaz Sephardi. Actually, I did a wedding once of a Persian girl, lovely lady, Jessica Levy. She's come on my program to Israel with me, and she married an Ashkenazi guy. So you know Persians are notoriously late to all weddings. You know this, right? You realize literally they're totally above time. Right? The chuppah's called for 5, they turn up at 9. It's completely crazy. First time I did a wedding, at such a wedding, a Persian wedding, I turned up, and I turned up on the invitation. It said, I was the rabbi doing the wedding. So I turned up, it says wedding call for 5, I turned up 4:30. Even the caterer wasn't there. So I did this wedding, this girl. So she had a problem. She has the Persian guest, and he's Ashkenazi. What are they going to do? Listen to this.
Make 2 cards.
She made 2 invitations. You heard it before? With her own eyes. Persian time and non-Persian time. And there was like literally like a 2-hour difference. It was ridiculous. And the Persians were still late. You can't make it up, right? You see this? No, I'm not kidding. This is true. It was like Persians, like, please come by 4, Ashkenazim by 6, and it's all okay. I'm just saying, don't shoot the messenger, I'm just saying. Okay. It is true.
Maybe only Persian, but not Sephardi. Like,
No, Persians. No, not the Moroccans. The Moroccans are Ashkenazi. You have a question on my Persian? Yes.
No, I have a question on the
Okay, well, she had her hand up first. I'm so sorry, Miss Scheinfeld, hand up first. Chaviva and then Miss Scheinfeld, yes. Shh.
Regarding what's going on, you said before when I asked about
Let me
warming
finish
drawer,
this. Yeah.
how does that apply here?
So warming drawer, that's the question by warming drawer is, you don't cook in it, it's got a knob, but that can be covered. Is that a cooking situation? Are you putting it into a cooking situation? There are those who are lenient, there are those that are strict. You've got to ask your local authority. Into multiple communities, people do it. I don't do it. My wife will not do it. There are people who do it. They have what to rely upon. The question is it Mexican mavashal? That's the question. Does it look like a cooking? Write those words down. You're going to need them for your finals. Mexican mavashal and your life. Right? Does it look like a cooking? Some say you're not cooking a warming drawer. Not a problem. And some say it's an oven. All I can tell you are the mechanics behind it. Get it? Yes.
Okay, so like in the winter when you have radiators on, are you allowed to put food on radiators?
Great question. Let's come to that right now. Let's say you're in a situation where you have something in the oven or some other food somewhere that's dry or minimal sauce, and you want to warm it up. So we're going to finish with this. So just follow, and then I think we're done. Oh, we have to do hatmana. Oh, okay, let's just do this one though. There is something called a hefsek kadeira. Hefsek kadeira means an interruption of the pot. Okay, an interruption. And it goes like this. If you have a fully cooked, dry or nearly dry item, you got chicken, you got matzah balls, you got noodles, you got a potato, whatever it is, or you pulled the food off the fire on Shabbos and it's now completely cold, or you took your hand off it and you want to return the situation, the rabbis are like, that's okay, you can. Oh, that's so nice of you, but what are all the restrictions? We're going to add something else. You're going to have the flame. Watch carefully, we're going to finish with this. Here's your blech over the flame. Okay, no blech, no returny. No blechi, no returny, okay? Must have the blech. Now what are you going to do? You're going to return it to the fire. It's cold, out of the fridge. The rabbis will be like, do something else. Have another pot upside down and put the pot on this. It's like a double blech.
What if you have two?
It's like a double blech.
Well, what if you actually just have two blocks?
Huh?
You just take a block and you put it on top of that.
That would be sufficient, according to, I've never seen it being done before, but the Sephardim are more lenient over here. The Ben Ish Chai says just put a couple of buttons, make 2 aluminum buttons, right, like flat pieces on top, or my wife just covers it with aluminum foil. Ashkenazim, I believe, are more, and they need an actual vessel. And it doesn't have to be full, by the way. If it's full, it's okay. A full is actually better, right? But at least something, and they'll take a plate, you may have seen it, and they put it upside down on the thing, and they put the pot on top of that. So if you have a piece of chicken in your fridge, you cooked on Wednesday, it's completely cooked, and you want to warm it up on Shabbat, you can. You cannot put it on naked flame. You can't even put it on the blech. You've got to put it on a kadeira, on a pot, or a pan, or a plate that's on the blech, that's on the fire, and you can put it on top of there, and there's your food, you can warm it up. Hefsek kadeira. Ashkenaz, Sephardim, again, more lenient. They just use aluminum foil, is good enough for that. More of a heker, right, than any diffusion of heat. Okay, and it's completely cooked. That is the Rabbanan when it comes to this. Electric plug probably doesn't need that. You could probably put it directly onto the electric.
Wait, that's when the food's cold? Or?
Cold, stone cold, out of the fridge, stone cold.
So then, if you have your chillin on Friday night and then you just put it in the fridge overnight and then
If you want to do that, then you can do that and put it hefsek kadeira. Exactly. Exactly. If you took it off and you want to put it back on the day, you say, oh, I'm going to warm it up, that would be sufficient. If it's fully cooked, but if it's too liquidy, some people say it's too liquidy and that's a problem. You gotta judge how liquidy, how non-liquidy it is. Yeah. If you have chicken wings are okay. Chicken, a bit of rotev, the sauce, even a little bit of accumulation of liquid is okay. That's okay. It doesn't have to be bone dry.
even for Ashkenazim?
Even for Ashkenazim.
See, I think this applies for liquid. You can never return liquid to
Liquid that is cold, you can never warm up on Shabbos. If it's still warm, it was on the fire, you can put it back.
Wait,
I have your midterms.
Ashkenazim